everyone, my name is Gabby and today I'm going to be bringing you my reading wrap up for December 2017. So this is my last video that I'm making concerning 2017 before we turn over a new leaf and move on to 2018. 2017 was definitely a very stressful year for me, but it had a lot of high points as well. But I'm glad to see the year gone and done with. It was a really long and stressful year and I'm really excited for 2018 because I have a lot of fun and exciting things planned and I'm really pumped for this year and I hope that it's going to be a good year. Definitely better than 2017. In order to make some changes with my channel and start anew, what I want to do from now on is split my wrap up into books that I've read and shows or movies or like things that I've been listening to, things like that, like the other category, because I wanted to start talking about both on my channel because I think that a wrap up for each month isn't just solely the books you're reading, but it's like what you're experiencing and what you're immersing yourself into. So this is very similar to what Christine from Pullin' Bananas Books is doing. I just think that's a really smart and really genuine idea just because I love talking about more than books because my passions is more than just books. So I wanted to be able to allow myself enough time to be able to talk about both because I love to ramble and I love to give you all of my thoughts and impart every single little detail that I have going on in my mind about these things that I really love, but it's hard to like sit down and like film a movie review for one movie or like every single movie that I've watched each month because I just don't have the time to do it. So really the only time I get to talk about like reads that are current to me or like shows or movies or things that are current to me is in these wrap-ups, and I want to be able to have enough time to be able to discuss all of them in depth without having to make a really excruciatingly long video. I decided that I'm going to make this change like I sort of made with my November wrap-up, except make it permanent. Because with my November wrap-up, that sort of happened unintentionally because I realized the video was going to be really long and then it would be better to just sort of split it into two, and I think that that worked out relatively well, and I think that it's just easier that way. And it's not like the videos are going to be two separate things. They are going to have each their own intro and conclusion. I'm going to be in the same outfit and it's going to look like it's one entire video and it's going to be filmed all at once, but it's going to be edited separately just to make it easier and not make it as excruciatingly long because I love to ramble and I want to dedicate enough time to be able to discuss my watches and reads because I manage to now read and watch equally. So it's not like I'm gonna spend a video discussing all reads and like no shows. It's actually relatively balanced now because I have a whole bunch of things that I'm really excited to watch, especially in 2018. I have a whole bunch of things up my sleeve that I'm gonna be watching and want to discuss on this channel. So I'm excited to make this new change and to be able to do something a little bit different. I hope that you guys enjoy this change and that it's more convenient for you as well. So now that I've sort of explained all of that, I should dive in and discuss the 7 reads to wrap up 2017. I read a total of 87 books this year, which is not bad at all. I always have a goal to read 100 books each year and I have not gotten to meet that goal yet, but I'm very happy with what I read in 2017 because they were all books that I, for the most part, really enjoyed. I got to read 21 more books than the year prior, so it was a really good year for reading and I'm really glad that I was successful with my reading. And yes, I did not reach my reading goal of 100 books, but I still felt successful and happy with what I did read. I'm not going to complain at all because I read a lot of good books that I really enjoyed. Even if it wasn't the amount that I wanted, I'd rather have quality over quantity. So I'm very happy with my reading this year and I'm really excited to get to discuss the books that wrapped up my reading for 2017. So let's dive in. So my first read of the month was Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. This was the 3rd book that I read for my AP Lang class and unfortunately it was my least favorite. Honestly, the biggest issue with this book, or the 2 major problems that I had with it, was number 1, the writing style. The diction is definitely much more elevated in this book because it takes place around the 1800s. So the writing style is naturally going to be different to reflect the time period that it's being written in and also the time that it was published. And it's a writing style that I'm very unfamiliar with. I really don't read classic novels, so I'm not used to this writing style. And with reading YA novels, you don't have to have that higher level critical thinking where you have to like interpret what it is that the characters are saying or what the writer is saying because it's written in like a modern day English. Like you're able to understand it and you're just able to read and like let it flow, which is why I read YA novels because you don't have to have that critical thinking step in reading. You just get to sort of like read the book and immerse yourself and it's like as simple as that. Whereas with books like Pride and Prejudice and Charles Dickens, like A Tale of Two Cities, and sometimes Shakespeare here and there, when the writing style is more elevated, you have to have that extra step of interpreting what it is that is going on with the characters and figuring out the plot. And that was just very inconvenient for me because the one thing I liked about AP Lang is I was able to like read the books, figure out what was going on, participate in the discussions, and like nice and easy. And I didn't have to do like any extra work having to figure out what was going on, but I had to add this extra step and it was just really inconvenient timing because I had so many other things going on in all my other classes and I was like preparing for final exams and taking some of my last like quizzes and tests of the year, and it was just really unnecessary and frustrating at the time period. And I just had a hard time like grasping this book, and a lot of it was just because I was really scattered and had a lot of things going on. So it was hard to immerse myself in the story and to be able to really understand it and really appreciate it. That, and also it's purely romance. I don't like romance, and I do read contemporary novels. But the thing about contemporary novels in YA is that it's not strictly romance. You have something else going on, whether it be a conflict within the family or an issue with friends or school or something else. Like there's always an extra thing going on that is like the center of your plot, and the romance is like the extra that you get. Usually the romance is like not the focus, and if it is, you do have other aspects of the plot that are going on, so it's not purely romance. I'm not a person who would like read Harlequin romance novels that are all like purely romance, because it's just not my thing. And so reading Pride and Prejudice, where it's all purely romance and a mother that is trying to marry off her children and literally solely focused on like getting these women husbands so that they can be provided for, like it's a lot of romance and a lot of like complexities, and it just like went right over my head. And it wasn't for me, and there was a lot of the characters that I was really frustrated by, Lydia and Wickham, and they really irritated me, and I just like wasn't in the mood for them. And it was so hard to get in the story, and there's like 9 bajillion characters in this book, and like keeping track of all of them, like it was just too much for me at the time that I was reading it. But I feel like if I were to pick this book up at a time where I could really be able to immerse myself in it and read it with diligence and be able to like take it all in at a pace that was good for me, I would probably enjoy it more. But like for the reasons that I listed, like wasn't really that good of a book for me, and probably my least favorite read of the month. My next read of the month was The Hearts We Sold by Emily Lloyd-Jones. This was one of the Owl Crate books of the month. I believe it was the August book. It follows our main character Dee, and she trades her heart to a demon in exchange for an escape out of her messy home life, and then she becomes a Heartless and has to fulfill all these tasks for the demon. And in fulfilling these tasks, she ends up meeting another fellow Heartless named James Lancer, and the two of them start to fall in love. And the whole question of this book is like, what do you do when your heart isn't yours? Also trying to figure out like what's going on with these demons, why have they come to Earth, who are they? There's probably a lot more to them than we know. Figuring out like what it means to be heartless, and there's like these voids that are mentioned in the books, like what's going on with them and what's their purpose, and just sort of figuring out what it is that's going on with these demons. And Dee also dealing like with her difficult home life and having her own plot in dealing with her and James and their relationship, and like how do you manage that when they both don't have hearts. So there's a lot going on in this book, so it's very hard to summarize. I really enjoyed this. Honestly, I wasn't planning on picking it up this month, and then I saw someone post about it in the Owl Crate Facebook group, which I'll leave linked down below if you want to go and check it out. It is for Owl Crate members only, so if you don't have an Owl Crate subscription, I wouldn't join, but I don't know if that's entirely the case, but that's what I assume. I'll also leave it linked down below if you want to go and check it out. Anyway, I saw someone post that they were reading it, and they posted a quote about like Harry Potter, and I was like, that quote looks really interesting. I'm gonna go and pick up this book now. And I mostly read it in November, but then I had like 2 pages left and I never finished it. It got to be like December 2nd or 3rd, and I was like, shoot, I need to finish this. And so I did, and I figured, well, I can't talk about it in my November wrap up now because technically I finished it in December, so that was kind of inconvenient. Anyway, this book, I really enjoyed it. It really surprised me, and I thought that the plot was really unique, and seeing this explanation for the demons in the world and figuring out how and why all of this is happening, I thought was really unique. The story itself was just different than others that I've read before. I loved the relationship between Dee and James. I thought that they were so cute. I just loved getting to read their characters. I loved a lot of the characters and the way that they were developed, because they were just really unique and really different and really diverse. I also loved the representation of alcoholism in this book, and so that's like a trigger warning, just so you know, like before you go into the book, like alcoholism is a feature that is within this novel. I think it was really interesting seeing how that affects Dee's home life, especially because it affects both of her parents, and the way that she was raised then because of that, and the way that she had to navigate her life, and then the way that she thought of herself because of that. And it was something I really appreciated seeing, because as much as I don't have parents that are alcoholics, I definitely understood what it was that she went through, and I really resonated with that. And I thought it was a really beautiful thing to see, because you can have difficulties in the household not just because of alcoholism, but because of lots of other factors. Regardless of what the factor is, I feel like if you have dealt with that area of like abuse or having difficulties in the home, like you can really relate to what it is that Dee goes through. So I really appreciated did that. And I just think this book was really well crafted and a really beautiful and fun read, and I'm really glad that I got to pick it up this month. My next read of the month was Clockwork Princess by Cassandra Clare. This is book 3 in the Infernal Devices series. I loved this series so much, and I'm so glad that I got to finish rereading it. Clockwork Princess has genuinely become my favorite Cassandra Clare book of all time. And I really didn't like the Infernal Devices series the first time that I read it, but with the second read around, I fell in love with this world and the characters, and it makes me so excited for the new sequel to the Infernal Devices that is coming, not this year, but next year, I believe in 2019, that follows the children of some of the characters within this world. And I'm just so excited to get to see more from it because it's a world that has grown really close to my heart. I'm really glad that I got to reread the series in publication order with the Immortal Instrument series and the Infernal Devices. It kind of makes me a little bit bitter though, because if you did not know, Emma Books is planning a TMI TID series reread. It's also just basically an entire Cassandra Clare reread, and she has like everything on her channel. I'll link the video down below where she explains it if you want to go and check it out. I just literally finished my reread, so I'm not probably going to be joining, but I'm probably going to start with the Bane Chronicles maybe in August or like whenever it is that that's scheduled, and then like read on through the rest of the way. So I'll probably be joining you guys later on in the year because there's no point in me literally going through and rereading these again when I just finished reading them. Anyway, Clockwork Princess, I loved it, and originally I was reading the new paperbacks, and I did read the new paperback for the Infernal Devices, but for Christmas my aunt got me the hardcovers, and so I have all 3 from the Infernal Devices, and they are all signed by Cassandra Clare. I think it's fuzzy now, but you can see the signature. I think that she got these from Books of Wonder when Cassie went in and signed a whole bunch of stock for them, and I'm so grateful that I have these because now the Infernal Devices has become one of my favorite series, and to have all 3 of the books signed by my favorite author, like hell to the yes. So this was definitely like my favorite Christmas present that I got this year, and I'm so glad I got to reread this series. I love it so much, and it's grown so close to my heart. I love Tessa because I resonate so much with her, and I feel like I see so much of myself in Tessa. I love Will, I love Jem, and I've grown to love him so much more of the character because I really didn't like him that much when I was reading the Infernal Devices, but I grew so much more to love him, and like all the other characters, they grew so much on me, like Gabriel and Gideon and Sophie and Jessamine and Henry and Sophie, just oh my god, I love all of them, and Bridget, just like oh my god, they're all so wonderful, and I appreciate them all so much as characters, and I'm so glad I got to reread this series because it means so much more to me now than it ever did before. So of course, if I finished rereading Clockwork Princess, I also had to finish reading City of Heavenly Fire by Cassandra Clare, the final book in the Mortal Instruments series. I finished my TMI in TID series reread this year. I accomplished my goal, and I'm so happy about it. I loved getting to be back in this world because whenever I was feeling really down or just feeling really stressed out, I could come to this world and just be in a place that I really love with characters that I really love, and it was like the ultimate comfort read, and it was just the best thing, and I needed to read these books in December because I was so stressed out this month with final exams and last quizzes and tests of the year, and junior year has really sucked for me, honestly. It's been a very hard and brutal year, and I needed these books so much to get me through the first half of junior year, and I'm just so grateful that I've had them with me because they've just completely and entirely comforted me in a time when I really needed them. And I loved getting to reread City of Heavenly Fire because it was originally one of my favorite Cassie Clare books, and I loved getting to read it a second time around, and there were so many things where I was reading it and I was like, I don't remember that happening, and then I read it and I remember like then how everything came together, and it was just such a nice refresher to get to be back in the world. Alex's character in this book is wonderful, like the moments that he has where he walks in on people, and like so many really great Alec lines, like the I am not your bitch line with the pie is like one of my favorite Cassie Clare lines, even though it has like no poeticness to it at all. It's just really funny, and it's like up there in my top 5 to be honest. I really loved that. I loved like the humor within this book, and also a lot of the really emotional scenes in this book, and just such a good ending to this world. I loved it so much, and loved getting to be back in this world because it's just been such a comfort to me recently. My next read of the month was A Prince in Disguise by Stephanie K. Drome. So I reviewed this book for Teen Reads. I'm not sure if my review is up on their channel yet, but once it is, I will leave it linked down below to sort of spare you guys me discussing this book because I do discuss it somewhat in depth in my review. I'll just give you like a brief synopsis and let you know that I generally enjoyed this book. It follows our main character, Dylan, and she is swept off to Scotland for her sister's wedding after she has been on a reality TV show, and now Dylan is basically getting swept up into all of this, and it's her sort of having to deal with her winter break and being in Scotland for her sister's wedding and having to have camera crews all around her and just feeling really uncomfortable with that. And then also meeting one of the bookish groomsmen, Jamie, and her sort of developing a relationship with him and having to learn to be around the camera and sort of seeing some of the twists and turns of this reality TV show and basically just having to learn to be around the cameras and learning to be comfortable in her own skin. This story was really, really fun. If you want to know more of my thoughts, I will have my review linked down below once it is up, because I'm not sure if it is yet, but if it is, it'll be linked down below. The next read of the month was Foolish Hearts by Emma Mills. This was the December Outcry book of the month. Literally after I went and opened up the box and filmed my video, I immediately went and read this, and I absolutely loved it. I loved the aspect of A Midsummer Night's Dream, which is the play that is put on in this book, which is sort of like the theater aspect that ties into this novel. This story follows our main character, Claudia. Towards the end of the summer, she's at a party where she witnesses the breakup of two of the high school's it girls, Iris and Paige, and when she ends up getting found out, her and Iris develop a little bit of a conflict, and Iris is basically a total bitch to her. She now has to navigate this situation that she's been put into when she has to be partners with Iris for her English class, and they have to work together on this play for school. And then it's also about Claudia meeting a boy in the play named Gideon, who's super funny and charming and who like everyone is really interested in, and so her having to sort of possibly develop a relationship with him, but having to learn what it means to develop a relationship and be comfortable in her own skin and be like accepting of herself, and her maybe possibly developing a friendship with Iris and sort of working through some of the difficulties that they have, and her also dealing like with stuff at home and her family. There's a lot that goes into this book, but the synopsis is actually relatively vague, so I'm kind of gonna leave it at that. I love this book a lot. It was such a cute contemporary and it was so much fun to read. I love the characters, I love the storyline. There was a surprising amount of representation in this book that I just wasn't expecting at all. There's also K-pop, which is brought up in this book, and like video games, which I wasn't expecting because that's just really different. So I liked seeing that because I'm not too into K-pop, but I know a lot of people who really, really love it. So I liked getting to read about it in this book, and I love like the aspect of video games because I get into like my fair share of video games. Like I'm not like a video game fan at all. I'm like very, very minimum when it comes to video games, but I've played like one or two. So it was interesting to get to see that representation in the book. The story was just really, really fun. All the characters were really fun. It was just a really cute, fluffy contemporary, and definitely a really, really good one to end out my 2017. So my final read for 2017 was Ringer by Lauren Oliver. This is the sequel to Replica, and so if you don't know about this series, it's a duology, and you can pretty much read it in like 9 bajillion different ways. You can either read all of Gemma's section and then read all of Lyra's section, you can read all of Lyra's section and then read all of Gemma's section, or you can alternate and read Gemma Lyra, Lyra Gemma, or you can start with Lyra and then move on to Gemma and then alternate that way. Like you can read it 9 bajillion ways and you can switch your methods halfway through. Like this book is incredibly cohesive, and it is probably the most difficult thing that I've ever seen to put together, but Lauren Oliver does it phenomenally. I think one of the things that's really great about this book, and since it is a sequel, there really isn't a lot that I can talk about it. I will say that within the first book, Replica, there is a lot more that goes on between Gemma and Lyra, and their plot lines are very, very similar because they're together for most of the book. What you're seeing is that the dialogue and stories that they're reading are relatively similar because the dialogue has to be interchangeable, because in the point of view of Gemma, you have to have the same dialogue that Lyra would say, not only in her own point of view, but in Gemma's point of view as well. So I think it was a lot more difficult writing Replica because you have to match up dialogue and scenes together perfectly, and I think it was a lot more difficult to create that cohesion. But with Ringer, Gemma and Lyra are mostly separate for the entirety of the story, so it's very easy to tell their own point of views because you're able to just tell Gemma's story and roll with her plotline, and tell Lyra's story and roll with her plotline rather than having to have one plotline that involves both characters and having to like flip back and forth between the two. So I think the writing style definitely changed and was very different, but I think it was possibly easier for Lauren Oliver to do that, which I appreciate because she should not make it that difficult for herself because I couldn't even imagine what it was like to put this together. So I think that she is brilliant for creating this and making it as cohesive as she does and as fluid as she does because I couldn't imagine creating this. Like, it has to be such a pain in the ass. So for her to create it as successfully as she did is absolutely amazing and completely mind-boggling to me. I think I read Replica last year towards the end of the year, and then I picked up Ringer in October at Anderson's because Lauren was touring with Adam for They Both Die at the End, and then also for Ringer because this book had recently come out around that time. It was really cool to get to meet both of them, and this book has been sitting on my shelf for a while and I'm like, I need to read it. And then after finishing Foolish Hearts, I was like, I need to read another book, and literally on New Year's Eve I picked this book up and finished it in one sitting because it's 29 chapters each, but it flows relatively quickly because some of the chapters are short, and literally as you're flipping back and forth it goes so quickly. You get so immersed in the storyline and it's so fast paced, and I love just getting to read it in one sitting because I really don't have a lot of times where I read books in one sitting. And I think I read Prince in Disguise, Foolish Hearts, and Ringer all in one sitting, which was so nice to get to do that and just read a book all at once because I normally don't do that, but now being on winter break I've had a lot more time to do that, and it just makes me feel really, really happy because I love getting to read books in one sitting and just be able to sit down and like cozy up with a book and just fully immerse myself in the world rather than having to constantly take a break. And this is definitely a world where you want to do it in because there's a lot of crazy things going down. It's definitely very advanced because you have like clones and lots of crazy things that are happening, and this book was insane. Like, it was absolutely nuts, but it was such a great way to end out my 2017 because after reading this book I was like, there's nothing else that I can read that could follow this because it's just so crazy and so intense, so many amazing things going on. I can't even begin to describe to you how good it is. This definitely is a duology you need to pick up because it just completely and entirely left me shooketh. It was great, so much fun, so intense, and you're seeing that those are the type of stories that I'm reading recently are the ones that keep me on the edge of my seat because they're just the most fun to read. So I'm glad that I wrapped up my 2017 with a Ringer because it was just so freaking good. So that about covers it for all of my reads of December 2017. I think that my reading ended relatively well for the year. I loved all the books I read this month aside from Pride and Prejudice. It just was a really good reading month, and all the books that I picked for myself I really, really enjoyed, so that's a bonus for me. And I'm really excited to see where 2018 takes me for my reading, and I hope that I'm just as successful with my reading in 2018 as I was in 2017. If you guys want to comment down below what book you read in December that you really, really loved, let me know. That being said, thank you guys so much for watching, and stay tuned for my watches of December 2017 video, which will be linked down below once it is live. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye!